Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thanks for downloading another episode of Wigs for Wigs. I'm Joe Cook, and I'm joined once again by our political panel, educator Bill Venezia, Judge Ed DeFazio, and Dr. Michael Buxbaum. We are recording this on February 25th, 2026. We are all covered in snow here in the Northeast as we record this. We're taking a break from shoveling and being generally miserable about the weather to talk to you all about politics, a very uplifting subject, of course. Last night was Donald Trump's State of the Union address, and I want us to talk a little bit about our State of the Union here in the United States right now, and really any topic people want to technically touch on in the shorter episode we're going to put out today. And I just want to start with two quick quotes, then I'll open it up to people with their thoughts. I want to quote from just two other State of the Union addresses, or annual messages as they were called in the 1800s. The struggle of today is not altogether for today. It is for a vast future also. With a reliance on Providence, all the more firm and earnest, let us proceed in the great task which events have devolved upon us. And then, fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of the Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we now pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. The way is plain, peaceful, generous, and just, a way which if followed, the world will forever applaud, and God must forever bless. So those are little excerpts from the closings of Abraham Lincoln's first two annual messages to Congress in 1861 and 1862. Trump live up to Lincoln last night?
No, that quote's fallen on deaf ears with regard to Trump.
So, did we watch the State of the Union last night?
I have a confession. To make. I did not watch it, and it was the first time I haven't watched a State of the Union in I don't know how long. And, I don't say that. Sorry. I don't say that. I don't say that with pride, and I don't say it to make a political statement. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it, especially when I heard that it was going to be a lengthy. That was the end.
Well, you know, he has the 3 or 4 longest in State of the Union addresses in history. Donald Trump. And last week was the longest, the new longest.
I must admit I turned it on, but I turned it off because I just couldn't take it. I did tune in towards the end. I couldn't believe it was still going on, but I've scoured ABC News and to get feedback, and also PBS. And I mean, it was rife with exaggerations, out lies. I mean, it ran contra to everything in the memory of Lincoln, and to put Lincoln and Trump in the same sentence is abhorrent. You know, I just hope that the people of this Congress, of this executive office, and the Supreme Court especially, remember what they're doing. Will, you know, the whole world's watching, not only the whole world, but history's recording it too. Maybe the Supreme Court stepped up to the plate with regard to the tariffs.
You know, for me, you know, I went to see the Oscar nominated shorts because I just feel it's sort of the State of the Union, right? Well, first of all, it's very hard for me to watch Trump, and I am actually one who supports several of his policies, but just to watch him makes me sick. And I think there is kind of a difference between some of his policies and the character of the man. And what, you know, I saw that after that Rob Reiner incident, he couldn't get any lower, but then with Obama, you know, kind of silently endorsing that racist cartoon. I mean, all he could have said was that he, even though he disagrees with Obama's policies, this is not acceptable, this is racist, and whoever did it is going to be fired. That's all he had to do. And he couldn't get himself to do it. So there is this kind of this discrepancy between, in my mind, or people who are similar to me, between some of the policies which I do support and the character of the man, which is, a complete scumbag,
Well-
It's going to have to make me put my little my little E on our episode. But to quote George Conway, a total piece of shit. Is how he described Donald Trump.
Pretty apt.
So
I mean, I just hope. And by the way, I'm just going to take this little piece out of it when he talked about Iran, that the blatant, he said he obliterated their nuclear capacity. So why are we ramping up another invasion?
that is a topic I wanted to talk about today, is Iran, because that's the latest one in the news that we're going to, potentially be taking military action against, although we apparently had a nuclear sub floating off of Greenland and somebody got sick on it, and Donald Trump sent a non-existent hospital ship to the rescue because we can't possibly trust Greenland to treat somebody with their free healthcare system. But beyond that, yeah, Iran. So first of all, before we get to Iran, how much did he talk about Ukraine last night? I know Olvi said you didn't watch it. He didn't.
He didn't.
He didn't talk about Ukraine at all. It was literally the 4th anniversary yesterday of Russia invading Ukraine. Their war that was going to take them 3 days to conquer Kyiv, and we're on 4 years now, plus a day, didn't get a single mention from the president in his State of the Union address last night, which, as we already said, was not a short State of the Union address. It's not like he didn't have time to mention Ukraine in there somewhere. But he did talk about Iran. So what's going on with Iran? Are we going to war?
I think as things digress and as things get worse in terms of public opinion, when he looks at the polls, he has to do something. And especially to, of course, the specter of Epstein's looms large in this too. I mean, the fact that he's mentioned, quote unquote, a million times. And yet not all of this stuff is out, and who knows how many Sharpies they use to redact the damn thing, the stuff that they have released. So I think it's wag the dog. And, I think too, his military is stepping up a little bit, telling him, okay, here's what you can expect in casualties. Here's what you can expect in expected terrorism, which by proxy. I don't think they're as defenseless as Venezuela. And, I think it's ridiculous, foolhardy, and it's done basically for his own edification and amusement. Maybe he wants to basically rename Tehran to Trumpville. I don't know.
Coming back to what you already said, though, Bill, and I see Judge, you want to get in, but just for a second, he claimed months ago we destroyed the Iran nuclear program.
Yep.
And now they say that Iran is possibly a week away from a nuclear bomb or missile. If we destroyed it a few months ago, this years and years long program, how are they within a week of a missile or bomb now?
Well, I have a somewhat different opinion to Brother Billy. The problem with Iran, ever since the revolution in 1979, it's been always a problem. And anybody who thinks that they are not developing atomic weapon one way or the other,
they definitely are,
is completely either naive or not very smart. Because if you only need uranium for peaceful purposes such as medical research, you need up to 5% enrichment, and they've been enriching much more. Now, to answer Joe's question, we may have damaged it severely, but they are already, Israel, which is watching it like a hawk, has already uncovered they are digging into another mountain. I forget the name of it, but they even know where it is, and they are digging a facility for enrichment much deeper than Fordo, which may be very hard to penetrate, even with the 30,000-pound bombs. So you would have to use a nuclear bomb to bomb it. So, and I listen to both sides. I listen to both sides of this argument, but I believe we should attack them together with Israel, because They are in a very weak position. Nobody's really supporting them. And if we can achieve a regime change, that would kind of transfer the Middle East. Now, there are counter arguments, and we don't know how much they have the capacity to respond. But I think between Israel and the USA, we have so much firepower that we can probably, and I cannot say for sure, but I think we can probably neutralize most of their offensive capacity.
So
Well,
much for the great peace.
Iran has been impossible to deal with. And that makes it a very frustrating situation where you want to act out against them because they are so recalcitrant. And let's not forget that they, meaning the regime, they have absolutely no regard for their population, where they've killed thousands. I'm not going to try to exaggerate it, but let's say thousands of people who have demonstrated against the regime. I don't like to advocate for war, but Iran really pushes you to the limit, and this has gone on now for 2 generations. So we're supposed to, I believe, be having negotiations again with them tomorrow, and you would think that a regime that was concerned about their people would make whatever concessions are necessary within reason to placate the United States. But I don't think, unfortunately, that that's going to happen. Now, it may, but I don't think it is. And if they don't, it has really now boxed us in that we are going to take action. So that's the way I see it right now.
So I was digging through some of my archives recently, and I dug up an old college paper from an international relations course I took, and it was me basically arguing that this was in 2007 or 2008. We should be taking a more hawkish approach to Iran, and obviously things have gotten worse with Iran in the 15, 20 years since then. So I'm not going to disagree that we should take some action to rein Iran in. I think we should. I just, with anything with this administration, I question the motives. I question the timing of it. I question the preparedness for it. The planning that's going into it. I don't understand. They did not claim we significantly damaged Iran's nuclear program a few months ago. They said they completely obliterated it, that it was back to square one. So I don't understand how they're going to have a bomb any day now if it was completely obliterated a few months ago. And I can't get the idea, and Bill was talking about this, the idea of this is just a distraction from Epstein, out of my mind. I was not somebody who was on Epstein for a long time, but the more that this is developing, and we haven't even talked about Pam Bondi's absolutely deranged hearing with Congress last week, but I have a hard time believing this isn't just purely let's get Epstein out of the news and other bad stuff, the 36% poll numbers out of the news, by going and trying to get a little rally around the flag syndrome and go attack Iran. It's an easy target to make that happen. Not easy in that it's going to be easy to do, but easy in that mostly people are in agreement that Iran are bad guys. So,
well, we did have a viable agreement with them under Obama that was verifiable by the Atomic Energy the International Atomic Energy Commission.
But was it verifiable by the Trump Commission of Peace and Justice League or whatever it's called? That
how can you trust anything these people say? But going back to what Michael said, you look at the instability there. We caused that. We don't study history. We didn't study basically the 50s. That foreign policy helped create what happened in 1979 and what's going on now. I bet if there was a freer society there, the average Iranian would basically want the mullahs to be deposed. I don't think they want a theocracy.
So I think what you're arguing is if we broke it, we should buy it, right? So you're calling for us to take over Iran. Here it is, Bill.
No,
Venezia, Warhawk.
No, sorry. I think the three of you are neocons, not me. I think diplomacy, this administration is incapable of it. They couldn't even do some good diplomacy for themselves at the Olympics. Everything backfired them. How'd you like those pictures of Kash Patel in the locker room with a bottle of champagne after he took an FBI jet to go to the Olympics? And why didn't the boss go?
But Billy, even that with the Kash Patel, you see, there are a lot of people in this country who think that was perfectly fine. The Kash Patel is guzzling a bottle of beer. He doesn't drink champagne. Bottle of beer with the Olympic team, and of course, people, and rightfully so, are very proud of the Olympic team. It was a great game, and I enjoyed it very much. But there are a lot of people in this country who say, "Oh well, that's okay. He was celebrating like any real man would want to do," and they don't look like you do and like we do at the fact that this guy is actually, and I'm going to use this term, stealing from the government. All right, to take flights, to get all sorts of special treatment, not only for himself, but for his girlfriend. But you see, that gets lost. Mm-hmm. It gets lost. And this is what the Democrats, all right, better be careful of. All right? Things, the people, the media are not looking and taking the deep dive that's necessary. And I went off a little bit on a tangent here, so I'm going to I'll stop right there.
I was going to say, it gets lost, much like Kristi Noem's little blankie that she lost and fired her pilot from her private plane.
But, going back to what Joe said, you can do two things at the same time. So it's possible that some of the build-up and possible strike on Iran is also partly kind of the wag the dog moment, or to try and distract us from other things, but it also could be the right thing to do. So, my concern about, theocracy is that the mullahs, the people who are very religious, they don't care so much about this life, they care about the next life. So they would be much, much more likely to use the atomic weapon, because even though they would know they get destroyed, they feel they will be martyrs and they will get the 72 virgins and some kind of a life in paradise. Unlike, if it was a strong man, like, let's say, the Kim Jong-un, for example, he wants to stay in power. So he probably will not use the weapons unless he feels there is some kind of an existential threat to North Korea, because his goal is to stay in power and have his family continue to have the influence or to lead the country. But the extreme fundamentalists, particularly Muslim, their goal is the next word. That's why they will say things like, you love life and we love death. So death for them could be a redemption. And the other thing about Islam, especially radical Islam, I'm not saying that every Islamic person is a radical, but the radical Islam is, there are passages in the Quran which says about other people with other religions, you either convert them or you kill them. And to the radical people is, that's the word of God. So if you are a moderate Muslim, you would have to say, I don't agree with that. But that means to the radical person that you don't agree with the word of God. So a lot of these people are interested in taking over the whole world.
Well,
And
a lot of
there is a so in other words, one has to be very careful about some of these countries which are led by the Muslim radicals having weapons of mass destruction.
a lot of them are also very
Echo with
influenced.
2003, huh? Those weapons of mass destruction. I don't believe Bush. I certainly don't believe Trump. And
you don't believe they have any atomic weapons that they are trying to
I'm not
develop
saying
them?
that. I believe that they're progressing toward having them.
Right.
Because as our posturing also, I guess, is calculated as strengthening our hand with Iran during negotiations, a little bit like Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly, carry a big stick. But I'm not so sure of that. And when the U.S. military, on the pragmatic side, tells the government, we may not have the capacity to do what you want. We may not even have a supply of armaments to do what you're asking. And then when they talk about casualties, American soldiers and military people, or in the Gulf of Hormuz, and what about all those proxy groups attacking different sites around the world? An attack on Iran in the capacity that has been hinted at by this administration is going to cause serious repercussions, because with every action, there's a reaction. And we may be just creating thousands, maybe millions of more terrorists. And what happens if 9/11?
Why didn't we see that? Why didn't we see that reaction after the last strike on Iran, or Iran, I should say? Why didn't we see that acting out then? And I'm asking this because I don't know the answer to that.
I think that this administration has completely desensitized, and you've talked about this before, because there are so many outrageous things that come out every day that people just tune off. And I do think the American media,
I think the judge is asking about the international reaction in support of Iran and the mullahs. Why we didn't see that? Am I correct, Judge?
Correct. Why didn't we see the radical Islamists who are proxies of Iran? Why didn't we see them act out after?
Because Israel's got them on the run for most. I think they're basically retreating because of Gaza, and they're trying to strengthen their hand as they do retreat, and that's a military tactic.
I'm sorry to say, why then, if that is the case, that we should strike now then, if they're on the run.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point, because, they are on the run. And also, I mean, I agree with Bill that we don't know what will happen. And there is a possibility that Iran could retaliate pretty heavily. But there is also a big possibility that between Israel, who is penetrated, the Mossad has penetrated Iran, and they have very good intelligence. And, they've been watching them like hawks, because for them, it's an existential threat. So between Israel and USA, there is a good possibility we can prevent a lot of these, because right now the danger is from the ballistic missiles. But in order to launch these missiles, which they have about 3,000 of, you need the launchers. And if they can take out the launchers, which is a task, but if they can take out the launchers, then it's going to be very hard for Iran to respond forcefully. And I do agree with Bill that the proxies have been severely damaged. Like Hezbollah is nothing, but, I mean, it's a shadow of what it used to be.
I do have to bring up one other consideration, though, which is that Russia and Iran do have a strategic partnership. Iran has been providing drones to Russia, for example, for their war in Ukraine. Will Vladimir Putin tolerate his little pet Donald Trump going in and removing the Ayatollah and the mullahs from Iran?
I think Putin is exhausted. He cannot even defeat Ukraine. let alone get into a conflict with the USA.
Here's a fun fact to know and tell. The Ukrainian war, the Ukrainians have basically fought longer than the Soviets did in repelling Hitler at this point. It took basically less time for the Soviets to repel Adolf Hitler than what's been going on. So if he's basically his benchmark is to equal Stalin, he's failed miserably.
In a couple weeks, they'll surpass how long Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth's beloved Confederacy fought to stay alive during the Civil War. It was just over 4 years.
Well,
But
it was all downhill after Gettysburg, which you have in your background.
yeah, so, as usual, I have Gettysburg in my virtual background here, listeners. So this is a shorter episode where we're constrained by time. We didn't get to record on our usual day of my school schedule where I have a longer period because of all the snowstorms we've had in the Northeast. We've had some scheduling chaos, but we wanted to get an episode out there to all of you listeners. So we have come to the point where I have to go around for people's last thoughts, what they're watching for, and hopefully next week when we have another day where I have that longer period, we'll get another episode out towards the end of next week. But as we look ahead to, let's say, the next week, because I'm hoping next week we'll be able to record again. Doctor, I know you'll be in Switzerland, but we'll see how scheduling works.
Yeah, that would work for me because it's later, 6 hours later. So
Right.
that shouldn't be a problem.
So let's just go around. What are we watching for in this next week? Or what's the story you want people looking at that maybe isn't getting a lot of attention over this next week? And let's go to Bill first. Either one of those ways you want to approach this question.
Well, I'm still at a loss to explain, and maybe Eddie's the best one to elucidate. So the Supreme Court struck him down with regard to the tariffs, and he went out and imposed more tariffs. And I'm still at a loss to figure where the tariff money go. So I mean that story deserves more time. It's I guess because of his wife, Clarence Thomas got out and railed against his brethren who wrote the majority decision, and so did Kavanaugh. I guess they have the most to owe Trump.
Yeah, I was hoping we would get to the Supreme Court and tariffs today. So maybe next episode we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. But I found Justice Gorsuch's opinion or concurring opinion, the most interesting because it was basically like basic government 101. He was saying Congress does things and there is separation of powers, and the president does things and the Congress does things, and they're both different parts of the government and they have different responsibilities. And it was like almost childlike the way it was trying to explain the separation of powers. But yeah, I agree. We should talk about that at some point. But I think the issue is he's now applying them across the board. He's not trying to do, I don't know. I have to look more into it. Judge, you're what you want to look at the next week?
Well, the next week, I think it's something that we've alluded to is does the Epstein story get propelled to a different level? We're hearing about the fact that there may be hidden references as to President Trump maybe being involved in some sort of misconduct, and I think that is in fact going to be perhaps the story of the next week.
So we did talk quite a bit about, kind of jokingly about Kash Patel's drinking at the celebration of the hockey match and, wasting taxpayer money. But let's not forget Kash Patel also, when he was confirmed, he said in congressional testimony that there was no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein ever trafficked underage girls to anybody but himself. And that seems to just be an outright lie. that is not getting the attention I think it deserves on the subject of Epstein, but we can talk about that more later also. I think there's a lot about Kash Patel we should be looking at, but Doctor?
Yeah, well, I am still waiting to see if we attack Iran or not. So that's something which is kind of an evolving story. The other thing that eventually, not necessarily next week, but I want to talk, well, I was also encouraged by the Supreme Court because they did the right thing, which some people doubted they would do. But, at some point, we should discuss, maybe not next week, but at some point, this debt crisis, because, and it sort of came to my mind more because now with the refunds that we are expected to give, it's still more money to be printed. So these printing presses are going. So eventually, I think we could end up like Argentina with like 100% inflation, because that's one way. That's the only way to do it. If you have too much money being printed and not enough growth, if the expansion of the money supply outweighs the growth of GDP, then inflation follows. So I think that's a big danger, and the politicians are unwilling. They know it. The politicians know it, but they are not doing anything about it. So that's my kind of long-term goal, to discuss that.
Mike, maybe Argentina will lend us the money to bail us out.
They got it down to 30%, but that's because Trump lent them some money.
I started today reading those two quotes from Abraham Lincoln's annual messages, and the first one where he says, "The struggle of today is not altogether for today, it's for his vast future also." Very often people connect that to his work against slavery and all, but actually, if you look at the context of the speech, he was talking about the economy and the growth of the economy at that moment in time, what was going on with farm production numbers and things. So that's actually the context that he said that in, was about the growth of the GDP and the economy in the midst of the Civil War. So ties in, oddly enough, to what you're saying there. And yes, we will eventually talk about the debt. I feel like this is coming to, I don't know if people are Jimmy Kimmel fans like I am, but he used to end every episode with apologies to Matt Damon. We ran out of time. We're not going to have time to Matt Damon. That was just a running joke on his show. And I feel like our show is becoming, apologies to the debt crisis, but we will come to the debt crisis in a future episode. But listeners, let us know what you're watching for over this next week. Let us know what your thoughts are on some of the topics we have discussed. We love hearing from you. We can be reached, as always, at Wigs for Wigs. That is the name of this site, WIGSFORWHIGS at gmail.com. You could hear your thoughts featured on a future episode, or reach out to us with questions that you'd like us to tackle in a future episode. We would love to hear those from you. So keep watching the news, stay informed, and we'll see you again soon for another episode of Wigs for Wigs. Take care, everybody. The views expressed in Wigs for Wigs are purely those of the individual speakers and are not meant in any way to represent the views of any places of employment or other organizations.